Hello church family, Nick here for Daily Hope. We're in Joshua chapter 4 today. Now in a minute I'm going to be going back down to the church campus where with a team of amazing volunteers I'm going to be there receiving the food that those of you who've been helping out with our food drive are bringing along. I want to thank you for the outpouring. Literally tons and tons of food has been collected to help those in our wider community who have been food insecure and going through hardship at this time. And you know, it's suitable because I think one of the legacies of this time has been an outpouring of love. It's good that we talk about legacy because in Joshua chapter 4, if it's about anything, I think it's about legacy and remembrance. Now, I remember hearing once that around every 100 or so years, they resell the plots in cemeteries because there's no one around to remember you. This is an affront, of course, to our narcissistic understanding of self, but it's probably true. Unless you were someone famous, that's about what it would take. What does endure is the love that you pour out, the legacy of love that you can leave. I believe that endures. Now, Joshua was a remarkable guy. He had a life kind of in three stages. For the first 45 years, he was a slave in Egypt. Then he saw the amazing things God did and he walked through the Red Sea into freedom. For the next 40 years, he wandered around in the desert with the rest of the Israelites. Even though he and Caleb had said, yeah, we can take these guys, after they'd gone in and spied in the promised land, the rest didn't believe it. So they had to wander around for 40 years. During this time, of course, he's mentored by Moses. And remarkably, I think his life was shaped by character. He was someone who was faithful. He was a servant. And it's no surprise that he was a kind of foreshadowing of Christ, the faithful servant. In fact, Joshua, with some linguistic changes, becomes Yeshua, becomes Jesus. But here we are in the last 25 years, the last segment of Joshua's life, where he leads God's people into the promised land. It was a promise given 850 years before to Abraham. Can you imagine waiting that long for a promise to be fulfilled? For me, I get frustrated when it's 8.5 days or 8.5 weeks before I see an answer to my prayers. But Joshua was going to lead them in, but it was so important that they remembered who God was, what God had done, therefore what God would do. Because if you don't remember those things, you're not going to have a proper expectation. God brought them to the Jordan River. On the other side was the promised land. And God said to Joshua, let the priests take the Ark of the Covenant in. As we heard yesterday, the waters will separate. Even though it was in full flood, they crossed the river. All the people rushed through. And then Joshua said, I want 12 men, one from each of the tribes, to go and get a stone and to come and to set it up here at Gilgal as a kind of cairn of remembrance of what God had done. And here's what he tells them. In the future, when your descendants ask their parents, what do these stones mean? Tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful. And two, so that you might always fear the Lord your God. Now, I meet up with a men's group weekly and we often encourage one another about who God is, about the things that God has done, therefore about the expectations that we can have about the things that God might do. And I think that's really the key here. We're to remind each other to fear and have awe of God, and also to remember the things God has done and to share about the things God has done, because others around us will be intrigued. Now, my wife has been writing this book. It's called an account of God's miraculous doings in the lives of Nick and V. And we often go back to it and read through and remind each other and remember the amazing things that God has done. So it might not look like that for you. It might look different for you, but I would encourage you today to take a second to sit and to think, what's some amazing things that God has done in my life? And to maybe you want to jot them down. Maybe you want to text someone to, hey, remember when God did this? But whatever it looks like, I would encourage you to take the time Friends, my prayer for you today is that you would be blessed, remembering who God is, remembering in your life what He has done, and therefore looking ahead to the things that He's going to do. I look forward to seeing you down at services this weekend or online. I miss you, church, and I love you, and I look forward to all the things that God has for us in the time ahead. Be blessed.